Good evening. Thank you for joining Met Speaks. I'm Andrew Bolton, the curator in charge of the Costume Institute, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight's discussion, The Battle of Versailles, American Fashion Takes the Stage. The discussion was organized in conjunction with the exhibition in America, An Anthology of Fashion, which is staged in the museum's American Period Rooms. And the show explores defining moments in 19th and 20th century fashion, American fashion, presented as a series of vignettes by various notable film directors, such as Sofia Coppola and Martin Scorsese, Chloe Zhao, Regina King. And one of the vignettes focuses on the Battle of Versailles, the 1973 fashion show that pitted 5 French designers against 5 American designers. And it was conceived as a fundraiser for the Palace of Versailles by the fashion publicist Eleanor Lambert, but it's reported in the press as a battle between the two countries. And the Americans went in as the underdogs, but emerged triumphant. And it was largely because of the modernity of the clothes, but even more so, the vitality of the models who walked the show. And in the exhibition, the event is presented as a literal battle by Tom Ford in the Vanderlyn Panorama, which is a gallery that features a sweeping panoramic painting of the Palace of Versailles and the Gardens of Versailles. And each of the models included in tonight's discussion walks in the American segment of the show. And I'd like to extend a huge thank you to Pat Cleveland, Bethann, Hardison, and Chris Royer. And the panel will be moderated by Robin Givhan. And Robin is senior critic-at-large at the Washington Post. Robin received a Pulitzer Prize for her fashion coverage. And in 2016, she published a book, The Battle of Versailles, The Night American Fashion Stumbled into the Spotlight and Made History. And we really couldn't find anybody more ideal to be a moderator than Robin. And I'd like to thank her for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you all for joining me this evening. I'd like to set the scene just a little bit before we begin. The Battle of Versailles really began as a fundraiser and a publicity gambit. Versailles was in disrepair, and it was fashionable then for Americans to support French institutions. And so the curator of Versailles asked his friend, the American publicist, Eleanor Lambert, if she had any suggestions on how to raise money. And Eleanor suggested a fashion show. They would pit 5 great French fashion designers alongside 5 American designers, all of whom happened to be Eleanor's clients. She was a very good publicist. The French stars included Yves Saint Laurent, Pierre Cardin, Emmanuel Ungaro, Hubert de Givenchy, and Marc Bohan of Christian Dior. And the Americans, Bill Blass, Halston, Oscar de la Renta, Anne Klein, and Stephen Burrows. The Americans used pre-recorded music. They had a spare set, and their clothes were sleek, easy, and unencumbering. And they had models who moved with distinction and personality. And what began as an international party and a publicity stunt was soon hyped into a battle by the media. And the Americans were victorious in that battle. They won over the crowd and their colleagues. And the 3 women who are here with us tonight were part of that victory. And I'd love to start our conversation with Bethann, Pat Cleveland, and Chris Royer. Bethann worked really closely with Stephen Burrows, and she also was a model. And Bethann, I would love if you would be able to tell us a little bit about the way that the American fashion industry was perceived in 1973. The designers, but also the models. I mean, what was the state of a model and her reputation in the 70s?
Well, that's a very good question. The fashion model was a very good thing at that time because she was part of every designer's world. The designers themselves are really very dependent on the fashion model then, because the fashion model, lived as muses to the designers, inspired the designers. And so that was the great thing of being a model during that time. It was diverse. We had, models of all types of background. Surely we had designers that were all types of background. So it was very interesting when it comes down to the racial plateau of the design world at that time. And working with Stephen at that time was wonderful. And having the opportunity for Stephen to be selected to go to Versailles was another thing that was magnificent for us. And I almost didn't get to be on that opportunity because each model had to have 3 designers in order to be able to go. And 3 different designers out of the 5 had to select 1 girl. And I only had 2, and Stephen needed me to go because I'm his assistant. And then I also fit the clothes for him. And then I was also a model for others. So I had Anne Klein, I had Stephen, of course, and then at the very last moment, they all kept saying, don't worry, she'll go. But it came down to almost 2 weeks before. And I went with Oscar de la Renta. It was a very good time for us, and we appreciated very much having that opportunity. We didn't know how great it would be until we, came home fairly victorious. But then it was interesting how it passed. I
mean, one of the things that you mentioned is that idea of the model as being so connected to the designers and being such a part of their world. Pat, you had just such a distinctive style on the runway. And I'm hoping you can tell our audience a little bit about sort of where that came from. I mean, no one could spin and whirl and just let the clothes take flight the way that you can.
Well, that's very nice of you to say that. But it was quite something not to fall off that stage with that bright light in my eyes. I mean, I couldn't even see the audience, and I was spinning till I got to the edge of the stage like a moth, and I almost fell off. And people went, oh, like they were catching their breath. But the style is just about, I grew up with all of these wonderful performers like Eartha Kitt and Josephine Baker around in the imagination. And my auntie was the Josephine Baker's Sunday school teacher. And the story of Isadora Duncan and all of these women who dance always was like in my body. And when I got the chance to be in these clothes and to express this feeling of freedom, because the freedom that we had as women then was the lingerie that we wore long ago in the 50s. We were not wearing it under our garments then. So we had body freedom, and we related to being free. So my style is the freedom of, having that beauty of freedom. Freedom is a kind of beauty. And we work so hard for having that over hundreds of years, being of mixed race. I don't know which thing I am, but I'm kind of like all the things. And I try to represent what is that feeling of feeling beautiful in the moment, in the clothes. That's the style I like, feeling the moment, feeling that beauty in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that really comes through, particularly in some of the images that we have been seeing, is there's a real joyfulness and a real pleasure in just sort of a body in motion that comes through in your style on the runway.
Well, I'm telling you, the fun thing is that someone has the confidence to give you that chance to wear that beautiful creation of theirs. And Halston and Stephen and Bill and Oscar and Anne, they all felt that I could carry their clothes and make it something that they would be proud of. And, you have to do your very best, because these clothing pieces, feed families. It's not a frivolous thing that people think fashion is. Actually, it's people sewing and making fabrics and industry. And when you put on a garment, you are representing all of these hundreds of people that make fashion possible for the public, for the ladies of society. It's a big deal to wear a garment, because that's a whole industry depending on a moment of presentation. What you see at first is what you get.
That is a perfect segue to a question that I had for Chris, because you worked so closely with Halston, you worked for the brand even afterwards. And at the time of the Versailles show, Halston really had just sort of become a newly minted millionaire. I mean, his business had just been purchased. It was a big deal. It was a seminal business moment in the fashion industry. I mean, what kind of pressure did that add to Halston being in Paris, to your representing Halston, for your being, sort of part of his world?
Well, timeline was actually, he signed the deal with Norton Simon November 7th, approximately. So there was obviously negotiations, and this, you're right, Robin, it was a huge deal. It brought him into another world that he dreamed of, but, now it was becoming a reality, and he could afford things to develop and grow his company. The workload at that point was amazing, because we were working nonstop till about 2-3 in the morning every night. You don't see anybody. The whole place is just through Monday to Sunday to perfect those outfits, to make sure everything looks perfect. And Halston was obviously a perfectionist to begin with, but this was very important for him because he brought in Liza Minnelli, and he brought in, the whole team in there. And he wanted his team to succeed as well as the others, because this represented American fashion. It also represented American made to order, which is sort of equivalent to French couture. But he wanted to identify, the whole sort of how American fashion is represented and how it can be respected and understood. And I think that was part of the pressure that he had at that point. But I think that the time of the fitting, because I and Shirley were the two house models at that point, and I was one of the muses for numerous pieces. It was tremendous to try to get them done. This particular piece that you see with the split dress, that was the opening act of the Halston segment, and it was a toga silk jersey. Was beautiful, and Elsa had a white one, and the way they had it, the way they positioned us, it was very dramatic to be able to show the white and then the black and the Elsa Peretti jewelry. And Elsa at that point was also coming into her own as a jewelry designer. And that was because of Halston introducing her to Tiffany. So the whole excitement of all of this going all of a sudden in this moment of time was amazing. And then to be in Versailles and to actually see the palace and to see the amazing history, to feel it and to submerge ourselves into all of that beauty that obviously needed repair. And obviously needed to be they needed the money to restructure and everything else. But it was an amazing adventure, to put it mildly, in many, many different ways.
Bethann, I wanted to ask you about some of those stress points sort of leading up to this event. Every time I have a conversation, it seems, with anyone who is involved with the Versailles show, the first thing that they point to is just how difficult it was, just all of the challenges leading up to that show, from just, there not being enough toilet paper in the bathrooms, to how cold it was, to just sort of a certain amount of chaos. Why is that, the first thing that people mention? Was it really that awful?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't awful. It was just a shock. I don't think it's fair to say it was that awful, because whatever it was, we had to eat it, sweet it, and get on with it. But in the end of the day, it's sort of like challenging, that's for sure. And, you would just realize that food wasn't that good. We had so much rehearsing, and it was a lot to imagine. You come into a place where you now become the underdog. When it first started, we weren't the underdogs. It was just an idea that was wonderful. But then afterwards it became, we became the underdogs. So you go in feeling with your tail between your legs a little bit. And then on top of it, we don't feel like we're being treated well because they're the host. And, we're going to a place that's theirs, and they asked us to come in to do this. So it was a lot of things like that, which was difficult. Mm-hmm. But, the American is in our soul, and we just sort of like champion on, and we got to it. The hard thing for me with the designers being competitive with each other at some point when we were there, that was difficult for me, because I really had to sort of like deal with certain situations and watch it. And that was interesting too, because people start to feel uncomfortable in their own skins. And the good thing about it is that at the very end, they all came together. Just like I always said, I learned a lot about Americans, how they can be fighting amongst each other, but when it's time to go up against the other guy, they put all their ducks right in a row and they get it going. So that was a lot of things too. So Mike having to support Anne Klein. Stephen was always the love of everybody. So, Stephen just stayed in his lane. It was just interesting in all of those kind of, it had its moments in many different ways, and not just the coldness of the building and the toilet paper and not having food and having to rehearse so long.
Pat, what was it like with the models? I mean, how much camaraderie was there between the models? Were they supportive of each other? Did you guys all know each other?
Oh, we loved each other. We were like sisters in love. We just planned our trip to Paris. We drank champagne on the plane. When we got out of that plane, Billy Blair kissed the ground. And then we got into that bus and they took us to a hotel and we were all bunking together like schoolgirls, 2 in a queen size bed. Me and Billy Blair. Oh my God, it was hysterical. All those products we had, and we brought so many clothes with us in the belly of plane. It was just like overloaded. And we were just in showbiz. We all wanted to be dancing girls. And we did our rehearsals in New York with Kay Thompson. And she was Funny Face and Eloise at the Plaza. And she was just Liza Minnelli's godmother and Judy Garland's teacher. And we were in showbiz. So the show must go on, and we did it, and we just stepped over that rainbow and did our tap dance. Oh, it was really fun to be together. We were just having a great time running backstage, stepping on Nuriev's toe, plucking feathers out of the back of Josephine Baker's dress. We were just naughty kids like Eloise at the Plaza.
I mean, Pat and Chris, there was so much that the models had to do. I mean, it wasn't just a matter of coming in, doing your fitting and leaving. I mean, you had choreography to learn, and you had to also really sell the clothes. Right. I mean, because as Pat mentioned, these were not clothes that had all of this sort of interior structure that sort of created the shape. You had to make the clothes live, so to speak. I mean, what was that pressure like as a model there?
Well, for me, it was like, working with Halston and then also knowing what Bill Blass and the others were doing. It was a privilege to wear the clothes, but it was very important to understand the body movements that the designer wanted to emphasize and to show how the clothes became a reality. They should look glamorous. They should flow with the body. And I think that a lot of the girls, especially the American girls, knew this. And being in America, the way you walked was very different than how it was shown in Paris. Mm-hmm. And I think that it started to turn very quickly after that, because between the music and the girls' movement, especially the Americans, they walked with grace, but they also had a lot of ability to move and to show the pieces, to show the coat, to show the jacket in a very elegant but fluid way. But that was part of showing the design of what the designer wanted. It was a point of view. And I think it was a very important one. And I know, especially with Halston, that was very important. That's why he had his Halstonettes, and with Patty, it was always whenever you needed something that had all these beautiful swirling type moments and chiffon and pleats and stuff, that was a Patty dress automatically. And that was one of the dresses in the Versailles exhibition. It was the angel dress, because Patty just was incredible. She twirled and twirled and twirled almost to the edge of the stage. And it was like, everybody was like, oh my God, and then she stood, and then it was incredible.
Chris, we've talked a lot about the way that the American models that you guys move, but just so that people understand how distinctive that was, can you give us a little sense of how were the French models typically moving when they were showing the clothes? I mean, give us that contrast.
Their posture was different. Ours was much more relaxed. It had more of a linear line. If, let's say, Joe Eula sketched us, it was more...
Joe Eula, the great illustrator.
Yes, the great illustrator. And I think the French had more of a conservative approach. I know that when they would show in their showroom, they'd have little cards with numbers. And they had to walk in a very regimented way, which was not as...
Like today.
Right. And it's
like today, say it.
And it doesn't have the pizzazz,
fluidity.
The fluidity. Thank you, Bethann. That made the clothes and made the models. You look at Pat, look at the way Bethann walked on the stage. She was, wow, and that was from the heart. That was something that she did from her passion. And I think a lot of the American models had a great deal of passion to be able to work with their designers because they wanted to do a complete, presentation. And I think that was a very important difference in relation to the French. I think the French were very reserved, to put it mildly.
Chris, you mentioned the way that Bethann moved, and Bethann, you had a few things to say there about the distinction between the American way of moving and the French way of moving. And I want to bring up a quote from Bill Cunningham, the great photographer, who described your policewoman look on the runway. But in more than that, he talked about the way in which Versailles was this moment when the American designers and the American models really brought so many of the touchstones and the stresses and the shifting cultural vibe that was happening on the streets onto the runway.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that, Bethann, maybe you, since you have the policewoman stare, you might be able to talk a little bit about what was going on the streets in terms of the changing role of women, the changing nature of race relations, and that all sort of came to bear in the work of Anne Klein, Stephen Burrows.
You're killing me. It's a setup, a terrible setup. All right. Just to say this one thing, it wasn't what the designers wanted us to do. It's what we were free to do at that time. They were happy that when they put the clothes on us, what we did on the runway. No one told us what to do. That's just what it was. It was that moment in time that it allowed us to do that. And the Europeans had not caught up with what was happening in America at that time. So where we were putting music behind our shows, having people like Giorgio Sanangelo. I used to have to sort of throw names out like that weren't even Versailles, but the mixture of designers that were out there who really wanted girls to really bring something. And that was what I was saying about the difference with the model's muse. The fact of it is, yes, Bill Cunningham does refer to me looking like the moment of staring out like Watts. And because he knew at that time they were burning things down there. It was the riots. And the way I stood there at the audience and looked at the audience, it was so defiant because we were so nervous, so tired. We didn't want to lose. And I really, by the time I hit that stage with Stephen and that yellow dress, I knew it meant so much. It was something that was very powerful in this movement. So it was very strong. It was very much that way. And it was very much the way to sort of like defy them in a way that it seemed like it was somewhat warrior. And I think, yes, there was a lot of freedom back then. We had music and there's so much going on in America that was so different than what was going on with Europe. And unfortunately, is why I had to tag on to what Chris was saying, it's fallen right back to what it used to be like and what it has been before we came along and what is in Europe. They made the girls just walk straight, don't give anything, They controlled them, so they took away all the glamour and the diversity. So that's the unfortunate thing that what happened with them. But we had a great time. We have that to remember and hold on to. And you have to sort of like only a couple of girls right now will move their hips in a certain way when they walk down the runway. Because
Anna,
they can't do too much. Yes, that well said, love. So it was a change, it changed everything. But what we were able to bring, it changed Europe too, because then all of a sudden designers like, well, Mr. Samarant was always had a diverse eye, but he and Mr. Givenchy, they were people who really right away, really were inspired. Yves was very inspired by Steve and said he was the only American designer for him. And then you had, Mr. Givenchy, who was so inspired by the girls. They'd never seen that many brown girls either in one taking. And there was so many, even though we weren't the majority, but we were a lot. 10 or 11 girls, is a lot at that time. And so it became so inspiring for him to see in the way we were so elegant. And it had never been done before. They had never seen it before. And he just embraced it. So his whole cabine became, girls of color.
On that point, though, after Mr. Givenchy decided to do that, he also got some pushback from clients who were not all as accepting and delighted in his choices.
That's exactly right. But also, he not only from clients, but also from our, from our trade papers, Women's Wear Daily even. They really told him he has to not do that. Don't do that. You can't have a whole cabine. And he defied it. He just stayed just in his lane, didn't care what anybody said. He was inspired. And that was all that was important. But he did get pushback, like Paco Rabanne did many, many years before him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pat, you worked so much in Europe and had such an incredible career there. Did you notice, what kind of change did you notice in the aftermath of Versailles? Did you find that design houses were more enthusiastic about diversity, more enthusiastic about allowing and encouraging models to show more of their individual personality on the runway?
Well, when I first went over, I worked for all the houses in 1971, and I had to carry a number, and the rooms were tiny and silent with ladies of society. And we did that sort of broken at the hip walk and very straight, as though our spine was like rigid. And, coming there and in that beginning part, there was no expression. And then when we came over from America, I flew back to America to join the rehearsals, and everybody was jumping and moving to the sound of love. And we decided to be the bouquet to make them fall in love with us. So we went over there with our love arrow, and us girls. There was Chris and Beth and all the girls. Oh my God, the list of girls. They were like, Amina and Charlene and Ramona and Norma and Barbara and Alva and Jennifer. And oh my God, we were just, Karen was there, and Nancy North and Carla. We just got into a V formation, and we made our way like a love arrow, coming down to the edge of the stage, and we just let it go, and they just screamed. They couldn't get enough of Love Unlimited, or, they couldn't get enough any of that beautiful soul music, which hadn't been heard over there. And because of all this soul music and everything and the movement of the girls, yes, it changed. People wanted to have fun and drop the old ways. We were so young, and then the young generation came up and they started listening to that American vibe, and it's just the change. We were like American stars. The models, the Black girls started doing all the shows in Italy, the first to respond. And then Givenchy's cabine, all my girlfriends were there, and we just they would not hire anyone to do the shows but Black girls at a certain point in Paris and in Italy and in London. And it was so amazing what happened for Black girls, with all the struggles of slavery and being hated and everything. This beauty just sort of blossomed like one of those flowers that blossoms every 25 years or something. And we were blossoming, and we were just like perfuming. They say a character of a person is like the perfume of their spirit. And we just sprayed ourselves the perfume on everyone, and they just got the scent and the feeling, and they couldn't get enough. It was, oh my God.
It's funny because there's been such an ebb and flow in the kinds of models, the look of models that are celebrated on the runway. And then I think about the work of some of the designers, however. I mean, think about Halston and how enduring his impact seems to have been.
Well, he had Naomi Sims, and she was like onyx. It's so perfect and beautiful lady. And she was the cashmere model. Her body was so long and elegant. And he even used Danielle Luna, which was a forbidden thing. And we were on 7th Avenue and Danielle Luna was expressing herself by crawling down the runway in these beautiful beaded dresses. And, it was just amazing to see that Halston had this beautiful model. And then Eve had one beautiful model in Europe. And then Givenchy had a cabine. And oh my gosh, it was just wonderful. It was just wonderful that they were brave.
Chris, can I ask you why do you think Halston's aesthetic has really endured for such a long time? I mean, do you think it was in part because of the models that he partnered with? Did that have an impact in the way that we understand and think about his clothes?
I think his vision basically was the total picture, the total look. And he felt that, women had to feel good in the clothes, but they had to be, you had to create a presentation with the diversity of girls that had, especially with what is regarded now as the Halstonettes.
Just for those who don't know, what is a Halstonette?
Halstonette is it originally was a term that Andre Leontale created when we went to China, the global trip to China, and there was 9 of us. And it was spectacular, but there was 9 female models and 3 male models, and they were termed by Women's Wear Daily and Andre Leontale as the Halstonettes. And that term sort of evolved, and anyone that was friends of Halston became a Halstonette. But I think, when he first started, let's go back to 1972, he had this vision that he wanted in his cabine, multiple personalities, multiple looks of girls. They had different walks. Everybody had a different walk, but it was relaxed. It was fluid. It was hip. The music was jazz. So when we had the shows, they were fabulous jazz or Brazilian music. And, the whole presentation was done in a very relaxed but elegant way. And the dresses were made, one, when you put them on, to feel good. Once you felt good in them, then you really started to sort of become the total picture. Because if it's on you and you feel good, you automatically feel a lot better. But he knew with the girls that he had that were his favorites or his models, it was important identification, because when you saw the Halston look, you wanted it immediately. But he refined it so much for so many of the outfits. Halston didn't just do one outfit and then hung it up and put it away. He would constantly evolve the patterns in the fabric choices and then also the seasons to see.
Chris, can I just interrupt you for one quick second, because the photograph that we have on screen now, this dress is in the exhibition, and it looks so easy and so simple. But can you tell the audience a little bit about how it's really not quite as easy as it looks?
Right. Well, this is one of my dresses that Andrew decided he took from my personal collection. And this is a beautiful dress. It's got gores. It's a simple, what is called tank top look. And but the dress is on silk jersey. And what happens is that he had it embroidered to make it look like the body shimmer. And it's a beautiful dress, but once you put the beading on it, which was bugle beading and applique red paillette sequins on top of it, it glitters like crazy when you put it on. But as we all know, when you put the beading on, especially during that time, it gets very, very heavy. So this dress, Betsy was dying to wear. And Halston was like, okay. And so when Betsy put it on, it was like she was wearing like, it's about 25 to 30 pounds in weight. So when she put it on, she loved it. And then she all of a sudden started to realize that when she started to move, the skirt part of it started flapping around and moving. So she had to really move very slowly. And we had to show her move slow because it starts to have its own, movement in there. And that's how that dress was stunning. But if it was not for the bugle beads, it would be an amazing dress to wear every day. But
don't forget all the fabrics that he brought around. The
yes.
the 9-con beading, the family.
That was after.
And then he had the ultra suede in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because I was with him since 1968 when he first came up to 60.
Right.
60. And he did a lot of prints with caftans, painting on caftans and hand painted, by Joe Eula. And it was just like he just shift from the caftans and the painted to the next bugle beads to the ultra suede. And then he went wild with the ultra suede. And when we traveled around the world, we had ultra suede luggage to go to Paris. And we were all so coordinated. We were, when we went on the world trip with Halston and, going to Versailles, I mean, each one of us had our look that is to represent a different lady and a different style. And that's why we were all so different.
Also, I would like to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about Stephen Burrows, who was the youngest, significantly younger than the other designers, and was sort of the last of the designers to be added to Eleanor Lambert's list of clients. And Bethann, you know Stephen quite well, as do you, Pat. One of the things that I think people sometimes don't realize is that with Stephen's garments made of this really beautiful flowing jersey, it's not a heavy jersey. It doesn't really offer you a lot of help in the way of sort of support or anything like that. And a lot of that seems to be very much connected to, the life that he was living. And he was young, he was on Fire Island, he was going to parties. There was a real sense of freedom, which you guys have discussed a little bit, but I'm hoping that perhaps, Bethann, you might be able to talk about the way that's really reflected in his clothes.
Perfect. The good thing about Stephen, this was Matt Jersey, and he developed Matt Jersey helped with Jasco Jersey at the time. And it was, he had to find the right weight. He was trying to help them to figure out how to make it where it really could be as fluid and easy as he needed it to be. And then when he finally got it, I'll use Patricia as an example. We never wore underwear underneath each clothes.
Right.
That's
right.
Yes.
There were no Spanx.
No, we didn't need that. That's for sure. But the idea was you never wanted to show lines of underwear under these garments, which I see sometimes designers don't even remember to tell a girl to take her underwear up when they're walking down the runway because I can see her panty. You don't want to see that. And as you said, and as Patricia said earlier about it being about a point of freedom. There was a certain sort of like that. It was something that was about freedom. And he was at that time, developing. He had already gone from Au Boutique, then he had gone into Henri Bendel, and then he went and, we had the opportunity to have him to have his own line on 7th Avenue. And that's when, Eleanor Lambert started to represent him. And he just had the fluidity, have that he could work with the machines where they would he created a lot of things that no one even knows where the original thing came from. Everything from lettucing, which is like when he stretches the fabric and it ripples.
Yes. Or the metal dress. The metal dress.
Oh, and that was Whiting and Golding, who also only made metal mesh bags at the time. That your mother or your grandmother had, and Stephen went to them with Bobby Breslow and went to them and just asked, what would you consider? that they like to make a garment out of that mesh. He did that first, and other people copied it, and they get credit. But Stephen did that first.
When they saw it on us, we traveled the world in those Stephen Burrows dresses. You can pack 20 of them in a carry-on bag. And we were dressed for months. And you would go out to the opera, and the Gianni Versace would see you in the metal dress and copy it the next day, something like that.
So many local people did also the metal tops. It's just the tops itself that goes with the shirt that was really basically matte jersey as well. Stephen was very original in many things, and many things he designed and created. Underwear stitching, how he basically won everything, the marrow stitching on the outside of the dress, not on the inside. Many young people have copied that, but they give all credit to Stephen. They do. And
the zigzag stitch, right?
The zigzag stitch, that's exactly
the lettuce hem.
That's the lettuce hemming.
The wrap dress, the wrap dress.
The wrap dress before people had the wrap dress.
That's right.
Yeah, that was one of his best sellers because it was easy for women to wear. But like I said about, Patricia, I'll blame her, running around on Fire Island with no clothes on, with a no, she had clothes on, but she had Stephen Burrows on, but she had no underwear. Neither did I, because you couldn't do that. And that was a freedom of the clothes, and you danced, and then you can get wet in them, whatever the case may be. But he was a brilliant designer, and he gave us a great lot of joy.
And his idea was everything is a T-shirt.
Yeah. And the other thing he said, he always calls all the clothes toys. So when Patricia and he went down to Brazil, pack all your toys. And like Patricia said, we can get between the chiffons and the matte jerseys, you can get 20 dresses in.
Pack your toys, we're going to play.
Until we go to Brazil, and everybody wants to see. And when we get to Brazil, we start pulling things out of the suitcase, and everybody goes,
I want to wear it. And the clothes would go flying all over the room, and everyone would be dressed.
It's so true.
I am going to go to a couple of questions that have come in from the audience. Because we definitely want them to be able to participate. One of them is, it's a question related to Halston. And I'm going to now toot my own horn because it says my favorite line in Robin's book, that's me, is when Halston announced in the third person, Halston is leaving. And this was during the rehearsals, and it was quite stressful. Thank you, Pat. When it was quite stressful. And Chris, I know you talked a little bit about the stresses and everything that was going on in Halston's world when this was happening. But how did the designers really navigate the pressures that they were under? Because, in saying that they were the underdogs, that's really doesn't quite capture the role that American fashion sort of played at that point in the international industry. I mean, Paris really was everything.
Right.
And there was a lot of insecurity, even on the part of designers like Bill Blass and Oscar de la Renta, who didn't feel that they had the same sort of chops as these couturiers, of Paris.
That wasn't our problem at that day, but go ahead, take it, Chris.
Yeah, I think, in regards to Halston, he just felt this was a great opportunity. And this was part of his, legacy, because he had put together so much for this particular. Originally, he wasn't going to be involved in it. And then he decided to be involved. He decided to bring in Liza Minnelli, Joe Eula, and the entire crew.
And Kay Thompson.
And Kay Thompson, thank you. So that was a very important sort of commitment to everything in there, because he saw the valuable validity of what he could do in there and how he could be recognized. And I think also what he had done for his particular segment in there, he had music from The Dam, which was a totally different thing from the other music that the Americans had put in there. And he purposely made it into a very extravagant, presentation that he thought the French would understand because of all the different shapes that he created and put in as sculptural pieces in that particular collection. So he didn't really, the pressure to him was always, a challenge. He would always be saying, if I got lemons, I'll make lemonade. So he knew he was going to move. And I think the same thing with Stephen, and I think the same thing with the other designers. They knew this was an opportunity. It was a good event. And I think basically that you just keep going ahead. You don't really worry about the right and the left. You focus on your own designs, your own models who are there for you. And it's like what they call the like-mindedness. So everybody was on board at that time. And that's what made it special. And I think that's what made it part of the success, for Halston. And quite frankly, a lot of other designers, they believed in themselves, which was the most important thing.
But you never had that many designers together to do a thing like that. That was just a great teamwork. It was like teamwork with a big heart, and we were coming over to party.
And they were fighting amongst each other. Don't forget that.
The different, in Europe, this is how they work. They work 24 hours a day. There's no time limit. In America, the clock is ticking. We have finished at 5 p.m. That's the difference.
Yes.
Over in Europe, you drink your wine, you eat your cheese, you forget what time it is, and you go on and on. There's no time. In America, the time is ticking. We have to go home now.
That's right.
So there's a different attitude.
Yeah. Well, up at Halston, at that moment, it was not like that, and that's maybe the difference with Halston and perfecting his designs, because it was nothing for all of us to stay up till 2, 3 in the morning every night prior to collections, months in advance to perfect it. So then when the fittings came in for the girls like you, Patty, and the other models, it was done. He knew exactly what was going to work for Patty, where it became flawless. And then she just did her magic as well as the other girls. But it was very, very concentrated. And to Patty's point, you just kept working. But it was fun.
The frustrating part was that, the difference in the cultures really, there was a wall. One was the French were just going on and being their ourselves at home. But the Americans were confused. Why is everything taking so long? And there was a union problem.
Right.
The problem was not between the foreign designers and the American design. The problem was the stage and the stage hands, and the union had to shut down, and there wasn't enough time for the Americans to rehearse. And that's why Halston was upset, because he said, we came all this way and you're not feeding our girls, and we want you to give us our rehearsal time, because we need time too. And the thing was dragged on and on, with the French not considering the time limit. And that's where the confusion and the battle started.
Well, one of the highlights, which someone in the audience has a question about, was meeting Josephine Baker. And this person is curious to know what that was like, and whether or not, in particular for Bethann and Pat, you felt at all as if you were part of sort of the cultural, following in the cultural wake of Josephine Baker and what she had opened up in Paris.
What it was a cultural thing for us. Absolutely. She's the first showgirl. My great aunt was her Sunday school teacher and taught Josephine Baker to play piano. And she said, you are going to leave town and go with Shuffle Along.
The fact of it really is that I didn't have that same feeling for Josephine or any other culture. I guess Bill Cunningham was right. I was in Watts. I was all about all was going on in my country. So Josephine was someone I had met in Stockholm, and I knew her just a couple of years before. So she told me, when we do this show, she taught me, and she said, you've got to make sure you take me backstage to meet the girls. Yeah. So once we performed, she came and got me, and I took her backstage to meet the girls. I was excited for that because the girls, their reaction was so much worth it to watch how they responded and how much she responded to the girls. She was so proud of us. She was just happy to be American at that point.
And Grace too. Princess Grace was like, "Oh, go ahead, girls. The girl from Philadelphia and the girl from St. Louis."
They were very proud. They were very proud, and so that was the feeling for us. It was a great moment for Josephine as it's equal as it was for us.
I think so.
Well, we have just 5 minutes left, and I wanted to ask each of you to respond to a question which I am often asked, which is, if you were mounting the Battle of Versailles today, which designers would you want on Team America? And I'm going to go in alphabetical order.
Okay.
So I will begin with Bethann.
Okay.
All right. So I would go with, to respect the fact, Ralph Rucci, Christopher John Rogers.
Yes.
Mark Jacobs.
Right.
Oscar De La Renta, because the team he has right now is very, very good.
Yes.
And I've got to find one female. I know Gabrielle Hearst is showing in Paris, but she's American, right?
Yes.
Yes, she is American citizen.
Yes. That's right. So I would say Gabrielle Hearst because I have to have a woman in there.
All right. And you're up next, Chris.
Okay. Well, Bethann and I are Libras, so we think very much alike, and I agree with her. It's like, oh my God, because
Dream
I think, yes. And I think maybe Tom Ford might be part of that mix as well, but I'm trying to think of any other women designers at this point. It's sort of hard to point out, but I think Hearst is a very good one for that as well.
I'm concerned that the ladies are not coming to mind as quickly. I don't know what that.
No, it's true.
I don't know what that says about our industry.
Yeah, but it's also a woman's business. I don't care how many men are succeeding it. This was always a woman's business.
Yes.
We became the great female designers forever that was in the garment business. It was always our business. So I always say to some of the young girls, no matter what it looks like, it's still our business, and don't let go of the reins. Perfect. Because you're right about that, Robin. When you have to think so hard, before you could just name it, Pauline Trajay, Claire Mercado, but your Anne Klein, Liz Claiborne, you could just name them. But it's not like that. Go ahead, Patricia.
No, go ahead, Pat.
Pat, you are up. Who's your dream team?
I wear them all the time. I wear these clothes to events, and they're just so lovely.
Name them, Patricia.
I love Ralph Rucci, Naeem Khan, Anna Sui, Zach Posen, Tom Ford, and now Ken Downing, who has the Halston thing. I love them. I wear them when I sing. I wear them when I go to events. They're my friends. We talk on the phone. It's so fabulous. And Mr. Burrows can come back in with his vintage pieces, which I still wear. So I would have them all right there. Party time.
So Pat would have a double size, supersized team.
I would supersize it, honey. We would be marching in that V form and send that bouquet of love right out. Ooh.
Well, I am afraid that is all the time that we have. And I so enjoyed speaking to all three of you. And thank you so much for everyone for joining us this evening. And please go and see the exhibition at the Met.
Thank you so much for having us. We love you.
Thank you, Robin. You were wonderful. Thank you, Patricia. See you, Chris. Thank you so much.
See you guys. Thank you, Bethann. Patty.